going to start with a big question. Who owns customer experience in an organisation?
If we want to deliver an excellent experience and deliver value to customers all the way through the life cycle, it can't just be owned by one function. Everybody has a role to play, and everybody needs to be really clear on what that role is and what delight, in Martin's words, looks like from a customer standpoint.
For me, it's interesting to see when I talk to bank CMOs and I ask exactly that question, who's in charge for customer experience? There's silence in the room. And even the CMO is not standing up and say, hey, that's my job. Right. And that's quite interesting. And the next thing I ask is, how do you measure customer experience? So how can you see, hey, we are much better today than we were yesterday?
Yeah.
And sometimes the answer is, oh yeah, by the way, we have NPS and we are good on that.
Well, I know we're going to get on to talk about NPS and kind of the validity of it these days later on. Did you two have a perspective?
So I agree. It is the entire organisation that should have ownership of it. But I feel marketing is taking much more of a leadership role. And that's because data's leading that way. And having that data, it's allowing marketing to be able to provide the right support and direction to the other departments to help set the entire organisation up for success.
Yeah, I mean, we've tried very hard for everybody to feel that they're owners of it and that everyone has a role to play. I do think if it's a tone that's set from the top, I think you have greater chance of getting making more impact. So making the progress that you talked about, Martin. I think, I guess the challenge with the business that I work in is that if you are associated with something, it gives others the opportunity to step back and say, oh, well, actually, I'm not responsible for that. It's okay, it's Lucy is. So whilst I am to some extent, I try and facilitate others having a conversation around it, rather than putting myself into the middle of it and owning it and deciding on the agenda. I'm facilitating it. Yeah. So it's quite a
you raise a really interesting point, because I think we are in organisations much more comfortable where our division has a clarity around what they do in the KPI versus how technology versus marketing versus sales actually need to work together. So how do your organisations try and achieve that collaboration, that cross kind of discipline integration?
What we tried at Finastra is that, first of all, we made it a topic at the board level. And that starts to say, hey, how many customers have we lost over the last 3 or 4 years because we were not really focused on their happiness, on their health. And we came up with a number which was a 3-digit million number in terms of what revenue we have lost. And that was the shocking and eye-opening moment at our company, where we said, okay, we need to have that as the center of our strategy. And then, of course, the next question was, okay, who's in charge? And like Lucy said, all the functional leads have to be in charge. It has to be a kind of stakeholder agreement. Who is in charge for what kind of touch point with the customer? But you have to bring all this data together to measure it and then take the actions. So that process took 6 to 9 months to get all these stakeholders together and agree what we mean with customer experience and customer satisfaction, customer health. There is no common definition. I think that was.
And does that leadership role often fall to a CMO? Do you think around that board table?
Someone has to pick it, or the company decides, I think, to have such a position at the board level. We made the decision that maybe it sits with marketing. I had a strong feeling that I should take over, but I think you can throw it in whatever corner. Without the stakeholders, you will not be successful.
So, did you have a view?
I agree with Martin that it's hugely important to define strategically what is it that we're trying to achieve as a business and where does the customer fit in that, right? When we think about customer success, what does that mean to our business? Well, it's pretty obvious, right? You know, you've got a happy customer, then you're going to have a successful business. But somehow, I think in a lot of organizations, we often lose sight of that, which is really, really basic. So strategically, where does the customer fit? And what do we need to do as an organization in line with our brand promise and our brand value? What do we need to think about in terms of that customer experience. Have the conversation at board level.
So it goes back to purpose and vision.
Back to purpose, vision,
through.
and then define the vision for customer experience. Be really, really clear on what that's going to be, short, medium, and long term. And then, exactly the same as Martin, my last role, it was, okay, who feels strongly about this? And myself as the CMO, that was the natural place within that organisation for customer experience to sit. But to what Lucy was saying, it's so important when you're in that capacity to play the role of facilitator across the business. It's about driving the collaboration, so people are thinking about the customer life cycle end to end, but where they play their role, and then who do they hand the baton to for the next step in the journey.
That is a great opportunity to elevate marketing to that really commercial customer level as well, right? I mean, where I think all of us would want marketing to be.
And can I give another perspective as well? I 100% agree with what all of you have said. I think part of it, depending on your product or service that you're offering as well, is you need to think about yourselves also as a customer. Because we often, in many instances, think about these personas or what we've got to do for our customers and build it out. But if you're not using your own solutions or product or services, how do you know? You're not learning from it. And then if you're doing that, then you're aware of some of the challenges your customers might be having, and then empathy comes in. But you also then realize some of the modifications you need to make. So having those tiger teams in place to be able to have that focus, but then also getting that feedback on a regular basis into what you're doing in that innovation.
The last conversation we had was around diversity, inclusion, and making sure you've got diversity of perspectives, which as important to make sure that you understand your customers, that you've got people like your customers around the table rather than a bunch of middle-class people that don't buy the product.
Exactly, and I know, like in one instance, as one of our products, we spent 2 years building it out, and we had the entire marketing organisation use it before it was rolled out and sold to customers. So we perfected it. We took out all the mistakes from it before it went out. So,
I'm going to build on that point actually, only because I think one of the reasons why marketing has ended up being the facilitator of this is that we spend a lot of time getting feedback from the client. So we know what they like about us.
The voice of the customer.
Absolutely. We know what they don't like about us, and what are the pain points, and also how we compare with the competition. And for us, the interesting thing was that there's lots of law firms who do what we do. They all hire very bright, very smart, very capable people who solve very complex problems. Fantastic. But as one general counsel once said to me, it's a bit like going into a good restaurant. The food could be good and the service poor. I'm not going to return. And so I think, if you really want that distinctive brand piece that Zoe was talking about, I think you have to see it as an opportunity to be distinctive. And we've done that through having this regular feedback program, which sits across all levels, whether it's a questionnaire, whether it's in person, whether it's at events, whatever, and then feeding that back into the system so we know what problem we're trying to solve. Because I think you can easily go from the inside out to solve a problem that absolutely needs to be solved from the outside in.
No, that's a really good point. So to help navigate the rest of the conversation, I pulled out something from KPMG Numwood, which is a customer experience division. Right? I mean, I could have picked anything. Just more of a framework that they talk about for customer experience. So they talk about these 6 pillars: personalization, integrity, i.e. trust, managing expectations, resolution, effort, and empathy. So I'm interested, do they resonate with you? Do they kind of make sense? Does that language make sense to you when you think about customer experience? Because that's just a consultant's view of it, right? Which often, sometimes a consultant's view might be to put things beautifully into a chart that they can present rather than the reality of the world. So how does that land?
I think all these buzzwords sounds awesome. It's like a first page of a website. We need to be customer centric. We are obsessed by customers. But then you ask yourself, you ask yourself, how do you measure that? How do you measure customer intimacy? How do you measure trust? It's all good saying, but finally, if you can't measure, you can't track, you can't be better in certain things. And I think that's a bit the issue around those consultants. They come with very nice ideas, but tactically, how do you really move the needle in the company? That's the big question. What kind of system of record do you put in place to track it?
And it's also a defining point of how you handle crises. I'm going to use the example of British Airways. We've seen British Airways have a lot of strikes and how they've handled the crises. I'd say the last time when they had the pilot strike, they kept the empathy of the public, because of the way they were very clear in terms of the communication. So they were very transparent what was really going on. They were responsive to what was taking place, and they made their customer base feel empowered. They could make the decision what was taking place. So if you're going to be offering that customer experience, you've got to have the pillars to determine what's important to you, but then it's how you execute on that. And it especially becomes powerful in times of challenges, whether you've got sales periods or if you've got crises, and how you overcome or how you deliver that service during those periods.
And actually that's probably the most difficult time to do it, but also, to your point, actually the most powerful time to demonstrate what you are defining. Yeah, I know, Lucy, you have kind of, there's been some challenges in your organisation recently, and you've had to deal with those points of failure. Could you maybe share kind of how that has
just building on I will answer the question, I'm not dodging it, is that actually the organisation that I thought handled the crises the best was KFC.
Yes.
I mean, talk about no chicken. Talk about being brand enhancing, and I think if you can get to that place, I mean, I think that is just really smart. I mean, it's hard, isn't it? Because I think, you know, if you're measuring those points, you have to be getting it consistently right across lots of clients, across lots of, you know, different parts of the world, across different parts of your business, across different cultures, different personas, blah, blah, blah. And you know, can you really get that right?
All the time.
All the time. And actually the reality is I'm not sure you can, unless you're selling chicken, you know, I don't know, but I don't think you can. I think the challenge in that situation is to be really clear about who your most important clients and targets are, and get it right for them. You know, we have a program at Freshfields where we've got a certain number of clients that are very core to our business. And for those clients, and we know who the individuals are within those clients, we say it has to feel very personal. Everything's got to be topped and tailed, the process has got to be right. You know, they've got to feel like very, very special. And then I guess the less money you spend with us, the, you know, less important you become with us to some extent. So I think it is knowing who your key clients are and your key customers, and starting there, getting it right for them is critical, because you can often think you need to get it right for your new clients.
Right.
Maintaining your core client base is essential. So I think sometimes companies don't get that right. So I think getting it right for them, I think, is critical. And when you don't get it right, have a bit of humility. You know, say, look, you know, actually we messed up.
Yeah.
The amount of people who do not own up.
No, and actually, if you look at the Nunwood statistics, empathy is the one that all organisations perform pretty dreadfully on, because authenticity is not something that corporates are very good at, right? I mean, do any of you organisations have good stories about how you have been kind of much more authentic and honest about, we screwed up, sorry?
We had a situation, one of our call centres was based in Madison. And it was snowing, and people couldn't get into the office that day.
Yeah.
And so our CEO actually posted on Twitter to let everyone know that our service was going to be slow. Now, we've had our customers since do similar things. So a lot of our customers, when people can't get to their call centres or other areas, they actually tweet and let people know that people can't get in, and we want to let you know in advance. And that's showing that empathy and transparency.
I think it's also powerful because the CEO has chosen to go to social media to do it rather than the comms department as well.
I think it's one of these things. I mean, you asked the question, right, about, you know, whether those definitions sort of resonate with us. For me, it's less about whether they resonate with us. It's, do they resonate with your customer? I think Lucy's point around, look, align to your strategic vision, which is our core customer base. It might be all of them, or it might be a subsection, but aligned to our brand promise and our business goals, because ultimately we are a business, right? And we're here to make money. What does that customer or group of customers value? And, you know, so often, I think, Lucy, you mentioned this, inside out, right? We think inside out as businesses because we come from our point of view, but actually it's understanding truly what the customer values. Does the customer value empathy? Well, they probably would do in the call centre analogy, right? If you're trying to get through to somebody. Does somebody value integrity? Well, some people have very high ethical standards, but other people may say, well, if I can get it cheap, I'm not really so bothered about what happens on the back end, right? And I think you have to understand who it is that you're engaging with and what their motivators are. It's back to the persona, right?
But Just adding on to great thoughts from both Zoe and Lucy. Because expectations are so much higher, you've got all these companies coming in, especially the industry disruptors, that are setting such high standards in terms of customer experience and customer service that people can get. The expectation now is it doesn't matter if you're a B2B company or a B2B company, if you're an enterprise or a small business. Because they're getting those experiences as consumers, they expect that same level of experience from you. Absolutely. And it's no longer good enough to say, hey, I can't, they want to be, whether they're spending small amounts or big amounts with you, they want to be felt like a human, not a number, and be treated with that same respect. And so that's why we've got to start thinking about how do you deliver that great experience at scale, because you might have the clients you need to provide that extra level in terms of loyalty and other levels, but how do you get that great experience at scale? Because they're getting it from others, and there's going to be the next player that comes up and takes those customers away if you're not delivering that great experience.
It's a fantastic point. I often talk about actually all marketing should just be P2P, people to people. I mean, it's kind of a joke that we need to put it into a 3-letter acronym, right? But you'll work in B2B marketing kind of roles and organizations. How do you think about getting that understanding of what the customer value is and how to treat people like people when they are spending as decision makers on big kind of outlays, which are about business? What is that balance between understanding the person versus actually understanding the seriousness and commercial nature of what you're actually selling?
So for me, it starts with the persona, right? Who do we engage in the sale or the purchase, depending on the perspective of our solutions, their role in that purchase decision. And actually, when we think about them as people, I'm talking about the purchase, that's our end goal as a business, right? But if we think about it from their standpoint, what motivates them?
Yeah.
What do they care about? What do they have to do in their day-to-day life? If I'm an analyst for a financial organization, what is my responsibilities? How do I have to answer to my boss or my boss's boss? What data do I need? How do I, in my role, show value into my organization? And then from there, once you have that understanding, it's then about translating that into a value proposition, again, aligned to your brand promise, but the value proposition for that individual, so that you're really clear how you can, or your solution can help them, and then bigger picture how your solution can help their organization. And if you can demonstrate enough understanding of that persona, that individual, it doesn't have to be everything. You don't look at the checklist and say, are you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? You can have 50% hit rate. As long as somebody can recognize 50% is always my marker, 50% of themselves. Yeah. Then that's, you understand me. You understand my pressure, and I can see value.
How do organisations around the table get to that insight, that understanding? Because that's probably the most difficult part where to start. Is like, how do you get those unique insights around understanding what people value and how? Because there are lots of desk reports, but let's face it, if everyone's got them, you're not going to differentiate.
So when we started the process, and Lucy is spot on at this outside-in thinking, this was the first way on that process. So internally, we looked at all our balanced scorecard. Every company has balanced scorecard in every function. And when you look at all these KPIs, sometimes each function has 15 to 20 different KPIs that will make the function happy inside. But we took those scorecards and we walked exactly to the personas we wanted to address. And we said, hey, look at all the internal KPIs. Which of those, and you have only 3 you care about. And it was amazing, right? What kind of feedback you get. And we nailed it to just 3 KPIs per kind of touch point with that persona. Originally, across the company, we had 120 KPIs. And finally, we have boiled it down to 30. So more or less, we defined 10 important touch points or functions across the company. Every function just had now 3 KPIs. And these 3 KPIs were really moving the needle. So an example, in customer support, the only thing that the customer really cares is, have you fixed my problem in time with the right functionality? That's it. 3 KPIs, very easy. Internally, CS had 20 different KPIs. And then we started to weigh all these kind of KPIs, made an average calculation on a scale from 0 to 100, and put it into a real-time system. So as of today, you can push a button in the system and you get the customer health status. And some functions will show yellow or green or red. But now you can approach the function and say, hey, Martin, you in marketing, you are really not delivering what the customer is expecting from you, good communication and touching the right people, you need to fix your house, right? Whereas other measurements, it's a typical kind of board discussion, oh, who's guilty? And then all people shying away, and you don't find the one that is really in charge. And the next quarter you have again the same discussion, and your customers are not getting happy. But internally you have fixed all and nailed all your internal dashboards.
So how does that analytics translate down to behavioural change? Have you noticed by being clear and more simple that people actually act and go and solve problems themselves?
Well, I think goaling fixes behavior. So if you are paid to fix the 3 KPIs in your function, you are much more focused on that than saying, oh, I'm not guilty, but I think all the other functions are failing. So really put it into the compensation scheme of executives down to a management level is an important
So incentives
one.
Is the way to fix it? Does anyone else have a
But there's probably a view to build on that. There's probably also the element of transparency, right? The fact that everybody can see.
Yeah.
It's not then about dodging the bullet or trying to make it somebody else's problem. Data's data. And if we've all agreed at the outset how we will be measured, it's transparent. And then it drives that ownership and accountability, I would imagine.
Yeah.
There's another way that we look at it as well. It's I don't think of ourselves as a B2B company. I think of us as a B2B2C company. So we have to understand what's happening on the consumer side in order to support the businesses that we work with. And those businesses will have consumers, or they'll have businesses as well as customers. Now, all of us at the end of the day are consumers. And we have these rich experiences as consumers. And yet in the business world, we don't have those same rich experiences. So I know for our organisation, we really think about that in the technology we deliver and the products and solutions is not just for the consumers at the end of the day that are getting those rich experiences, but how do the employees that are servicing those customers get those rich experiences as well? Because if you can empower your employees with that great rich experiences, they're going to deliver that great customer experience. So it's got to be across the funnel as you're looking at it at every step of the way, and it can't stop off at any handpoint. The KPIs are there, but again, with those KPIs, you need to be able to have the tools and the data and the metrics and give those tools also to everyone across the organisation. So again, going back, if you're a frontline staff, do you have access to that data to make the decisions to say, what's coming in, this is where I see low volumes, this is affecting us. How do we plan for busy sales periods coming through? How does your marketing department support that? How does your sales, how does across the organisation really use that data? But you have to think of that customer end in mind, and then you're providing and building for them.
And that touches another point, the collection of data, where we have so many silos in companies, from marketing automation system to CRM system. We have at Finastra probably 20 other MarTech tools, all siloed. How do you bring that data together? Because without data, you're lost, right? And having a common data lake and architecture where you can now pull the right information, put machine learning or AI on top, it's hard without a data strategy. That leads almost to.
So let's come back to where we started. Is that who owns that? Is that the CIO, the CMO, or is it a cross-functional?
Well, that's interesting. I think that the CDO and probably my thesis is that the CMO is kind of merging into a chief data and chief customer experience officer, connecting the data with delivering best-in-class customer experience. I think half of what we do today as CMOs is replaced by AI in the next 3 or 4 years. Kind of segmenting the customers, targeting the right personas, putting social media. You can almost all do this with AI even today if you're smart. But connecting data with predictive analytics and predicting the next action you take with this customer, this is still, I think, where a lot of brain power will go in. You need data analysts in marketing. We never thought in the past about data analytics and data scientists in our department. I'm hiring now the first data scientists in marketing.
Well, AI is there ultimately at the end of the day to take away the simple tasks, to free up the time of all your teams to be able to focus on all the complex tasks. And you've got the learning that is tied to it. But a big part, like when you were speaking a little bit about the technology, you've got all these different systems. I think we're at the part where we've evolved as organisations in the world that there's not going to be one supplier or provider that's going to be able to do everything for you. So what you have to do is find that right architectural platform that brings it together, that your systems are talking to each other. So then if you're providing that service, you know you've got the information you can pull from the different systems to provide the service.
And do people around the table, not in your own organisations, but do you believe that marketeers, like senior marketeers, are owning what we just talked about, owning the whole CX data, kind of MarTech, and putting it all together? Or do you think there's still work to be done to take and elevate that to the board table?
I think there's still work to be done. I think in certain industries are a lot more progressive than others. And I think certainly, you know, I see a variety of different industries and a variety of different mindsets, right, from a consultancy standpoint. There's a huge opportunity for the CMO to partner with the CIO, right? Those two roles now really have to be hand in hand. And then from a customer experience standpoint, the CMO, to Lucy's point, is partnering with all of the others on the board. So there's this foundation and core, which is technology, to any sort of progressive or successful business, or any business that wants to be successful. But I think people get it cerebrally that it's needed, but either we don't quite know how to do it, or we get tied up in why we can't, or the politics, or the existing infrastructure, because it's hugely difficult. You know, many organisations are products of acquisitions and a lot of organic growth that happens. It's really, really difficult to make all that stuff work together to give you that single view.
And also, I think, I've just been on that point, I think people can just become a bit fixated by technology and data.
To solve the problem.
And the best conversations I have, you know, with our clients are when we're sitting down talking, you know, face to face and having a very open, very honest, very frank conversation. And if you've got clients that really believe in your brand and believe in the firm, which thankfully we have got a lot of, they don't want to fill out a questionnaire. They don't want to fill out an online form. They don't feel important when we ask them to do that. You know, and to some extent, and we talked about this a little bit on the pre-call, is that we have this pyramid which is effectively based on Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And yes, you know, people need the basics of certainty and trust, and you know, they need to know that something's going to be delivered when they need it and in the format that they like it and all that kind of stuff. And so that they're kind of like the basics. But when you're dealing with people at a personal level, which is where you really get the empathy, you get the buy-in, you know, they buy more from you, all that kind of stuff. It's you know, what are you doing for them as an individual? How are you enhancing their life, their career, their connections? Mm-hmm. What are you actually doing for them?
Which is much more human, emotional.
And no machine and no data, not that I know of, can do that.
Not automated, but maybe it can give you the signals to know where to focus.
Yeah, and there's the bit on the edges. And thankfully at Freshfields, I feel very privileged that a lot of what I think I need to own to do my job, I do own, and that's fine. But I'm never going to lose the reality that most of our business is face to face, and it's about getting that balance right, I think.
So talking about technology, I mean, we touched on earlier the fact that actually a lot of customer experience and actually the brands that jump to the top of CX tables or league tables tend to be technology businesses, because CX is becoming synonymous with great apps, kind of slick user experience, whether it's Deliveroo or Uber or whatever else. But is that what is customer experience all about technology? I mean, you just obviously challenged that. Is it all around technology, or is it about augmented kind of intelligence rather than AI? Interested in that balance, because I think you're right. At the moment, a lot of the focus is on if you get your UX and your UI right, then you're going to deliver great customer experience. But then actually some of those companies, let's take Facebook as an example, have serious trust kind of issues because of some of the things that they have kind of been involved in, and the way that their CEO turns up at certain kind of certain conversations.
So we should look at it. I 100% agree with what Lucy said as well. So we've really got to think about technology as more as the enabler. It's not the problem fixer. So you can't, if you've got an issue in the organisation, just putting a new system in is not going to fix it. You need to be able to understand, like, what is it that we're trying to solve for and how are we going to get for that? You have to have humans behind that, and humans are part of the process as well. The technology, as I said, takes away those simple areas, and the more complex ones allows your teams then to focus on the right area. And we're going to be continually evolving. There's going to be, we look at new companies coming through, they don't have the complexities of the larger established organisations. They can pivot and move a lot quicker. Yeah. And as they're starting out their businesses, they're starting with the best of breed technology out there, whereas more traditional organisations have such large bits to navigate because they've already got processes, they've already got systems in place. So the challenge is for those larger organisations, because people are experiencing these great experiences with the smaller companies, the expectation is there.
Is that everyone can do
But
it,
what
yeah.
we're finding, and we do a lot of annual benchmark researches as well, those larger companies, more traditional ones, are starting to evolve at a much quicker rate than we've probably seen in the last 10 years. So in the last 10 years...
Because of the disruptive
Correct.
force.
And,
Yeah.
and the way that technology is being created now, it's a lot more integration capabilities that are taking place. Before it was literally a case of a rip and replace. It was proprietary software. You had to take one vendor to be able to do it. Now, companies are recognizing, you know what, people can't go through, especially those larger companies. They've got this foundation in place. So how do we help them with the foundation, build on it, and allow them to talk to each other?
Yeah.
It's about giving that single view of the customer, right? How can we make what we've already got plus anything else that we want to buy? Just give us that one view, and then that one view is what is that customer, that persona doing at a given moment in time? What content are they touching? What contacts are they engaging with in the business? To just build up that 360-degree view. By virtue of 360-degree, it's multiple systems, multiple teams, multiple functions.
It's like when they come into you as well, they don't want to know that, and we've all been there, we call up, whether it's a telephone line of inquiring about something on our mobile accounts, and they'll say, oh, I've got to check into another system and I've got to do this. Customers don't care about that. Like ultimately it's like, give me the answers, like provide me. So why not provide your teams with the systems? Why have them work in 10 systems? Get them to work in the one system. So when customers are coming through, they can be proactive in the communication, but also have all the information that they need to provide that great customer experience and service.
Yes.
Sorry, Martin.
Maybe confrontational here. I think technology can fix a lot of things depending on the industry and the customers you have. The more customers you have, not just 5,000 clients, but 50,000, 500,000 clients, you can't meet them face to face. And coming from the banking space, an industry which was always persona focused. Yeah, you go into the branch office to open your account, to get your mortgage. All that today is done electronically.
All of the fintech businesses don't have any of that.
You don't, and even when I look at my sons, they hate to go in a branch office. One of their criteria was, I want a bank where I don't have to go in the branch office. I want to open my account. I want a credit card for free. I want my current account for free. That's the criteria, and technology is enabling that. So the banking space will be in the future almost like a utility business. You use banking services, but you don't meet your account manager anymore, because even mortgages, which was kind of the inner thing, you have to go to the bank. You can open easily a mortgage.
So how do businesses differentiate
in
the future then? Like, what's the importance of a brand or a feeling or I like to...
I'll give you maybe an example out of the banking space. A lot of still UK-based banks have their very simple mobile where you see your current account and maybe you can initiate a payment, and if you are really lucky, you can even see your credit card statement, but that's it, right? And on the opposite side, you see in China, one of the largest financial players is called Ping An. Yeah. When you open their mobile app, it is almost like WeChat. It started with social conversation. You have now banking services in there, but now they are connected to your watch. They track if your heart rate at night is a bit higher, and they say, hey, maybe you should go to the doctor. And by the way, you can connect through insurance that is tied to our banking services. So they take care of the whole life of their client. That mobile app turns into a financial advisor tool, and it makes things so sticky because they add social chat functionality, all that stuff. It's an aggregation of services, and they are working pure digital. I think that's an area, at least, where you see an industry that was people-to-people business 10 years ago is now people-to-machine only.
But do you think that's going to go too far? I mean, that whole invasion of people's personal life, you know, whether you're fit, not fit, you know, whether you're rich, whether you're poor, you know, they know every move, they know how many steps you make every day. Your insurance premium is, you know, is determined on the back of it.
I think it's just a matter of weighting risk and convenience.
I think the consumer, though, has to determine where the line should be.
Absolutely.
And I think that's the bit that I think we're getting a bit wrong, is that we're making an assumption that everybody wants to manage their life through their watch. my watch definitely cannot do that for me.
And where do the cultural nuances come into this? I mean, China, obviously, most people are fairly familiar with data being collected about everything. Do you think these trends, which clearly are changing the world, these trends invade every market in the same way, or do you think we will have to create more kind of geographical, regional kind of nuances?
Well, I think it's a combination of things. Firstly, we've got to think about the generational divide. So we've touched on the different, like face-to-face in some generations is still really important, and that can't go away. And in other generations, digital, it's all digital and they never want to speak to anyone. But you've got to look at your customer base, and you need to be able to provide that great service and the channels, regardless of how people, thinking into account how people want to reach out to you. So if they want to reach out to you on the telephone, and that's going to be someone that's used to that regular contact, then that's fine, you're providing that service to them. If it's someone that wants to contact you through social, you've got that. If someone wants to self-serve and go onto the website and not have to do anything with anyone, you've got to provide. So I think for many years,
being omnichannel,
correct, because we many times, like for years now, we've said, oh, the millennial generation is doing this, so we've all got to move into this account. But you look at all the other generations, whether you're baby boomers and Generation X, they've started to evolve in the way they use the technology. But you still need to be able to provide different channels available to the different generations out there. And yes, cultural is a big part of it, but you've also got to bring the diversity in different channels and also different markets of where that technology is worked, because you've got some markets that are much more evolved than others. And some are still going to be 10 to 15 years behind to even where we are in the UK today.
True, very true.
It's understanding back to who is your target market, right? And actually being prepared to not service some people in the way that they want to be serviced. If they're not key or core to your business goals and your business strategy, it's okay to make the choice to not do it, but it's being really clear.
Isn't that just being provocative? Isn't that dangerous with social media and radical transparency these days?
No, I don't think so, because if you're very clear on what your business provides, the service and the value that your business provides aligned to its brand promise. If you're not trying to attract an 18-year-old prospective banking client, and actually you're trying to attract a mid-50s, Western world individual, it's okay, because you just accept that you're not going to get...
that your communication, your expression of brand makes that clear to people, because otherwise, if they don't get that,
I do think that's an excellent point. And maybe if I could just use my dad as a really good example, I make him go to IKEA with me,
which he loves,
which he absolutely hates with a passion. Go get the the transit van, Dad. Come to IKEA, and he absolutely hates the whole experience. But bless him, he'll always pay the bill. And so he will get the survey at the end of it, and it will say, did you enjoy your experience?
No.
Blah, blah, blah. No. And the reality is, he's the wrong target. So if you are not talking to the right clients in the right way with the right questions, you are going to get the wrong impression of your brand. You've got to know your target audience. I would always say that is the number one criteria, because if they carry on surveying people like my dad, they're definitely going to get the wrong outcome. They're going to get a skewed response.
And it's also, even within the context of your target market, just because you in the business believe that thing X is super important, having a great mobile app or whatever, actually understanding how much they value that thing, the importance versus satisfaction. You can be wholly dissatisfied, but if it's not important, then it's not worth your time within an organisation focusing on.
Well, and I think you raise an interesting point. If I link it back to something you said earlier, Martin, there are a lot of companies that are very digital kind of focused that don't have any human contact. Isn't it a challenge for those companies? I mean, they're obviously going to collect data, but some of that data might have kind of skews in it because of some of those things. Isn't it a danger that if you don't have human contact to get insight and deep human understanding, that you could be making the wrong decisions? And artificial intelligence, if it's not diversely created and has diverse inputs, couldn't it potentially lead you down the wrong path? I know that's not the narrative we have at the moment. The narrative is anyone that's smart with data, their business is growing like wildfire, maybe doing things that are maybe not completely 100% ethical of what people might want. Let's look at Facebook and Google as examples. Do you think there's any friction there, or do you think that'll change, or do you just think this is a march of data, technology and AI?
I think what you will see coming up is really around ethics of AI. Because a lot of the AI algorithms are biased, gender biased, and therefore companies need to lean back a bit and say, okay, we have to understand that AI is just an augmentation vehicle that can support you on your decision, but probably is, as of today, 80–85% good.
Yeah.
The last 15%, you need to take that risk. But maybe an example, banks are giving loans now, microloans, to people that they don't know. They don't have a credit history. They do a Skype interview, and based on their face recognition and voice recognition, they say, hey, what this person tells me is true or not. That kind of AI is so far that with 85% predictability, accuracy, they can say it's okay or not. And well, you would say in banking, 15% not accuracy is, wow, this is big. But they said, well, they pay an interest rate of 8 or 9%, and that interest rate pays me the risk that I have to lose maybe the other 15%. So it's again convenience and risk. I think we need to be all aware that if we just talk to machines, the machines are just as good as the people who have programmed the machines behind.
Absolutely. Okay, I think we're drawing to a close. So what I'd just love everyone to do is maybe just give one takeout, one thing that they would say that they've either heard today that they really liked, or that they would kind of say to the audience to think about when they're building their customer experience strategy. So I'm going to unfortunately start with you because you're on the end, Lucy.
So Zoe, hang on a minute.
Whoever wants to go first, you can fight each other for it.
I'm probably going to go back to the know who your customer is. Not know what they want, because I think that comes too, but know who you're trying to target. I think that's key, because everything I think then should flow from that.
Okay.
I would say you briefly touched on this when I was talking about different channels, about this is why we have omni-channel. It's not a case of just having omni-channel in an organisation, it's how you actually integrate the channels. So it's not about adding every new channel, that's right, picking those channels, but really integrating the channels that you deliver that service.
I like that.
For me, takeaway is again, customer experience starts at the top. You need to introduce that culture also of customer experience into the company. You need to put incentives and KPIs in place across functions to really nail that topic and make people accountable. Otherwise, you will not see a big change.
So in line with your business strategy, define your customer experience vision. And Martin's point about culture is hugely important. We've not talked a lot about culture, but all organisations are underpinned by a culture. We have to think about a culture which is customer-centric, or whatever customer-centric means to us, because it isn't just going to be the CMO or the CEO or somebody. We're all responsible for driving value or adding value into that organisation.
Very good. So you've heard it here. Customer experience has to start at the top, be thought through all the way through, measured properly. Actually think about the things that customers truly do value, and then think about how you actually integrate everything together. So thank you very much to our esteemed roundtable.
It was a pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you.